Welcome back everyone to Beat the Game. This is Steve and it's time to do our hero pack breakdown, understanding the mechanics of Groot. So let's take a look at this awesome new character from the Guardians set. So Groot, he's got a hand size of 6, a 10 health point, a recovery of 4, so really good, and an alter ego ability that says Growth Spurt. Action, place 2 growth counters on Groot to a maximum of 10, limits once per round. So that's pretty cool. So what the heck are growth counters? What do we do with growth counters? So let's look at Groot, our hero form Groot. He has a thwart of 1, attack of 2, defense of 3. He is a guardian, hand size of 5, and again, hit points of 10. Flora Colossus. This is a force interrupt, and this is very important. When Groot would take any amount of damage, remove that many growth counters from him. For each growth counter removed this way, prevent 1 of that damage. All right, so this is very interesting because it is a force interrupt. So we start off with 2 floral counters. Okay, so up to a maximum of 10. So basically he comes in with an inborn shield. So all these little branches on him are going to protect him, which is really cool. And that's going to help us, stay alive longer, take some damage. So we can use these growth counters as, little protection cards. All right, so he wants to stay up and alive. So again, if you have a defense of 3 and the villain attacks you for, let's say, 4, so you will defend for 3 and then you will remove 1 growth counter. You will not lose any health. Now, if you do take indirect damage, if let's say you take indirect damage, you will remove growth counters, okay, if there's nothing else to, place the damage on. But if you are in alter ego, you do not have that force interrupt, so you would still keep your growth counters. So I know in one of the first scenario is the Badoon ship of Badoon, Brotherhood of Badoon, lots of Badoons. There is an ability with the ship, the Badoon ship, that says when there's 4 counters, do 2 indirect damage to each player. So this would actually hit Groot and would reduce his health total instead of removing growth counters when he's in alter ego. So there you go. So growth counters can only be removed in hero form. All right, so that's something that, sometimes it might be a little unclear, but remember, he doesn't have that keyword, so he gets to keep his floral counters. All right, so also there's a couple cards, and we're going to talk about those at the end of the video that are going to be, especially in the protection aspect, that are going to be kind of weird, and they won't interact well with Groot. First of all, the sidestep and the energy barriers are the 2 first that come to mind. That are not going to work well with Groot. Now, they can still work, but it's not going to have the same desired effect because of this forced interrupt. All right, so that is it for Groot. Now let's take a look at a few of his signature cards. Now, one of the cool cards here, and there's 2 copies of this, is Fruition. So that's part of his mechanic. It says it's an action, and it's a superpower that you can do in alter ego or in hero form. Place 2 growth counters on Groot to a maximum of 10. So that's actually pretty cool because it actually can increase your growth counters and bring you high. So if you're pretty lucky, you get this in your opening hand, so you can go from 2 to 4 counters. So that's kind of like a buffer of 4 before you even start taking damage, which is really excellent. There's 2 copies of this. Very cool card. I like it. It has the desired effect. So it is a nice little event that he has. I'm going to put this on the side. Next one. Next event that he has that is pretty awesome is the Root Stomp. All right. So this is, again, a super cool card. It's an event for 2. It's an attack and a superpower. All right. Hero action attack, deal 5 damage to an enemy. So any enemy, minion, or anything. But if you defeat that enemy, place 1 growth counter on Groot. So again, really fun because he has 3 copies of this Root Stomp. So he can really be geared towards, doing a lot of attack events, even though you kind of want to be defending with him a lot. But this actually, helps you keep those growth counters up. So between the two fruitions and the 3 root stomps, that's 5 ways to put growth counters on him so far that we've seen. And I know there's 2 other ways to put growth counters. So 7 ways in his hero kit to actually increase his number of growth counters. So that's going to be pretty interesting to kind of see. So I am a root stomp, very cool. Make sure that you defeat minions with that, or just deal 5 damage to the boss. 5 damage in solo play is like a third of most of the villain's health. So you might like, wow, who cares about a growth counter? Just start punishing the villain. So that's a good option for that. Really like the root stomp. And then we have some really, really fun cards that we can play. So the first one is We Are Groot. So We Are Groot is a hero action, an event, again, for one, a superpower. And there's a lot of superpowers, but what's cool is there's actually something in this kit that's going to help pay for those. So that's going to be interesting to see. Remove up to 4 growth counters from Groot. So if we remove 1, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then choose that many friendly characters and give each of those characters a tough status card. So that's pretty cool. It kind of reminds you at the end of the Guardians and Galaxy movie 1, where he makes that big bubble and just protects everyone from the crash. So that is super cool. So We Are Groot, definitely an event that, even early or mid-game, it comes really handy, especially in the late game. So you can kind of spend those Groot counters and then have fruition come in and just like regrow those counters. So that's super fun. So I really like this card. Definitely a card that you'd want to play in the game. Like don't be afraid to spend those Groot counters. A tough status card, it means a lot. It can really help. Now he has a really cool attack event, which is I Am Groot, that really plays into this mechanic of growth counters, which is hero action, attack, an event that costs 2. It is again a superpower. Attack, deal damage to an enemy equal to the number of growth counters on Groot. Now here's where I think some people are going to be like, oh my god, 2 and I can do 10. This is right away we're going to extremes. But even if there's 6 counters on him, 2 for 6 is, I think, one of the best ratios that you could have. 2 for 7, 2 for 8, 2 for 9, 2 for 10. Of course, it gets exponential and it's extremely powerful. There is 2 copies of this card in your deck. So definitely, when you're looking at that, you're like, oh man, I really want to defend. You really have to kind of find the balance on the growth counters. When is it good to do this? When is it not? Trying to figure out where you want to be. All right. So even if you have no growth counters, if you go to alter ego, you can put 2 and then you get another 2. So you can have 4. 2 for 4 damage also is pretty good. You play a root stomp, you get 5, and then you play your I Am Groot. So there's really good ways to kind of play with that mechanic, even though it's not always like a 10 damage attack. It's still very strong. So you gotta use these when you can. It's good damage. So definitely a card that you want to be playing. Probably more towards the mid game, early game if you need like a fast removal. But I think it's a really mid to late game card that's going to be super effective. But again, if you have 8-9 growth counters on your turn 1. I don't know how you would get 8-9, but if you get like 6 or 7, you can still use your I Am Groot and boom, and deal like 6-7 damage on turn 1. Just like, that's looking pretty darn good. All right, so I Am Groot, very good card. Again, 2 copies of Dote, and then the third one is I Am Groot, and this is a 3 cost event. So this one's a little bit more expensive, but again, a very good card. Hero action, superpower, thwart, again another superpower. Remove threat from the scheme equal to the number of growth counters on Groot. So this can most of the times just take out a side scheme, or just anything that has, like, if you have 6 or 7 like growth counters, it's gonna remove a lot of threat. So it is a good card. This is going to be more tricky. Like it's 3 for a thwart event. I don't think this is a priority card in the early game, mid game, depending where you're at with the scenario. Obviously, it is a hero action to thwart. So you definitely want to try to find a way to keep those growth counters on you as much as possible. But again, if you don't have it, there's other ways to remove threat in his kit. So don't feel obliged to like, oh, I have to keep this card. There's 2 of them in the deck. So if you have a chance to play it. But most of the time, early game, this is going to be a resource. It's very rare that a scenario is going to start with like super high threat levels. So you should be good. But again, it's a great card. It's a good threat removal, especially that dives into his mechanics of having those growth counters. So again, it's a card I like. It's a big burst of threat removal. So that's why it's fun. All right, and then let's look at so we had 2 of those, 2 of the I am Groot, 2 of the I am Groot, 2 of the I am Groot, 1 of we are Groot. So that is 5 events. So plus the 3 events that are root stomps. So we're looking at 5, 8, 9 event cards, and then the 2 fruitions. So that's 9 event cards for his hero kit. Am I counting this right? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's 10 event cards. Yeah, it's 10 event cards. 2, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 event cards. So that's Hawkeye level of events. So again, now that we know that he has that many events in his deck, what is the key point to learn from this is don't put too many events in his deck. Because the point is to see these his signature events more often, really focus on bringing his deck size to a minimum. All right, so now let's look at some of the permanent cards that are going to stay here. And again, let's go back into play with these growth counters. Fertile ground. So that is another way. So this is our so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7. Yeah, so this is our 8. I think our 8 card. So the 2 fruitions, floral 8. So 2 fruitions. What's the call again? Growth spurt. So that's 3, 6. This is our 7th card. 7th card that can put growth counter. So fertile ground, 1 cost support. It's a location, so it's not a superpower. Alter ego action though. So that's kind of sad. I wish it was like just an action. That would be amazing if it was an action. But it's exhaust fertile ground, place 1 growth counter on Groot to a maximum of 10, and draw 1 card. So it gives you go to alter ego, you get a 7 card hand size, plus you get to put 3 growth counters. So if you get this on turn 1, this is a priority 1. This is definitely a priority 1 card to play. So 1, you get 3 growth counters. You go in 3 growth counters. So with just this card in play, if you go down to alter ego, all of a sudden you went from 0 growth counters to 3 to 6 on your next turn. So you just regrowed everything. So fertile ground, amazing card that you need to be an alter ego to play, and you actually get the extra card draw. So that is super good. So definitely a card you want to put on the table as soon as possible. And then let's look at the 4 upgrades for every one of the stats. So the first one, let's look at the one for the attack. It's called Vine Spikes. It is a 1 cost upgrade. Vine Spike. It is a superpower. Man, that's a lot of superpowers. I think most of the cards in his deck are superpowers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, everything except for what is there one that's not a superpower? Yeah, the Fertile Ground is the only card in his kit that is not a superpower. So that's really good because one of the cards is again going to pay for this stuff. So only 1 card in his kit that is not a superpower. So Vine Spikes, Hero Interrupt. When Groot makes a basic attack, you can remove 1 growth counter from him, exhaust the Vine Spikes, and Groot gets +2 for that attack. Again, that's a super cool thing. Use those growth counters as you need, as you see fit. If you're balancing between like 10, 9, 8. If you got all the way up to 10, don't be afraid to spend some of these. Because again, they grow back. They grow back. That's the great part about this mechanic, is you can go to alter ego and grow everything back. So don't be afraid to spend those growth counters to, increase your stats. So this is the one for the basic attack. Remove 1 and then +2 for that attack. That's really good. Let's look at the one for thwarting, which is called Entangling Vines. So 1 cost to upgrade. Again, super good card. It's another superpower. When Groot makes a basic thwart, remove 1 Groot and give him +2 for that event. So for that thwart, so now he can thwart for 3 if you spend a growth counter. Man, scheming for 3, that's legit. That's super good. And it also is going to help you remove like those pesky side schemes and things like that, or just keep control on the main scheme. So it's a very, very interesting card. Again, spending those growth counters to maximize your efficiency is a plan. You're often going to be torn between like, oh, am I going to play these? Am I going to keep my growth counters to do my big events, or am I going to use them to increase my stats? And this is why the mechanics is pretty fun. It gives you a couple of lines of play that you can see. If you're going to be more event focused and you don't really care about your signature events, and you don't really care, you want to use your growth counters more as a shield. If you're going into different aspects, it can be interesting. Or you can just use them to further your cause on whatever you want to be doing. So I think it's pretty interesting. Here's the other one that's really cool. It's called Vine Shield. This is going to increase your defense. Again, 1 cost upgrade, super cheap. Vine Shield superpower. Hero Interrupt. When he defends against an attack, he gets +3 defense by spending a growth. So now you have a defense of 6. Man, defense of 6 is crazy. That you can take on like a major attack. Even Rhino with his charge is still not going to be it's not going to be scary at all for you, especially with a defense of 6. That's just super good. So again, another great card that you want to put on the table. Every one of those cards are priority ones. You get them, you put them down. You just want to put his kit down. He only has 5 cards to put into play from his hero kit. You want them all on the battlefield. You want them all. And then the other one is this is one of the better ones. Lashing Vines, another 1 cost upgrade superpower. Hero response after Groot uses a basic power. Okay, so after he defends or attacks or thwarts, you can spend 2 growth counters and exhaust the Lashing Vines to ready Groot. So this one's a little bit more costly on those growth counters, but it's a ready effect. So again, we already know how good those are. So those ready cards are great. And then you can technically in one turn spend up to 1, 2, 3, 4 growth counters, flip down to alter ego, manage everything, manage threat, manage have a perfect defense, and then just ready back up, and then go back, kill a minion, and then flip down, regrowth some counters, and then go back into the game. So there's really a lot of fun plays that you can do with this Lashing Vines. Again, priority number 1, all these, the Fertile Grounds and all his upgrades, priority number 1. Put those cards into play. There's only one ofs, so don't miss your chance to dance. All right, here we go. Now let's look at the protection cards. There's new protection. I'm not going to talk about the other protection cards that he comes with. We already seen those, but the new cards we're going to talk about are one of them that I love. This card is called Fighting Fit. This is what was missing in protection. It is ways to deal massive amount of damage. Now check this out. This is 2 cost event. It is an attack hero action. Deal 2 damage to the villain. Well, it's not that good, Steve. 2 for 2. But if your hero's remaining hit points are equal to or greater than your hero's starting hit points, deal 5 damage instead. So 2 for 5 damage, that is better than uppercut, conditionally if you have more health or equal or more health than your starting life total. Characters that are going to love this: Iron Man, once he puts a rocket boot in, he's already at +1. Thor with his helmet. Hulk with his I forget what it's called there, the immovable object. Any character that can give himself extra health is going to be great. And endurance goes in every deck. So endurance, honorary Avengers, cards like that are now even more worth to play in protection to give yourself like some really crazy good attacks with Fighting Fit. I think it's going to be a great card for the take no damage strategy to actually take no damage, which is great. It kind of stalls out the game, but now it has a way to close games with this Fighting Fit. Awesome card for protection. Definitely needed. Now, let's look at some of the upgrades that are introduced here. One of my favorite upgrades is going to be Dauntless. Oh my gosh. Now, again, conditional upgrade for 1. It's a condition. Dauntless says play under any player's control, max 1 per player. So, this is a good card if you want to be playing some like heal everyone strategy, keep everyone at full strength. Now, this is while your hero's remaining hit points are equal to or greater than your hero's starting hit points, your hero gains retaliate 1. Now, a little small nuance on this. Let's say you are at 10 out of 10 health. You have no growth counters and you get an attack of 4. Okay, so you take 1 damage. You will not retaliate. All right, that's super important to know. After damage is dealt is when you would check to see if this retaliate will trigger. Okay, and it only works if you have equal or higher than your starting health. So make sure that you keep that in mind when you are playing this card. All right, so that's very important. But all in all, this is a fantastic card for a lot of characters. I know it's going Black Panther, Captain America, all those characters that want to take no damage. Well, maybe not Black Panther or else his vibranium suit is useless. But maybe if you put something. Anyway, that's game mechanics. Never mind. All right, let's keep focus on what we're doing here. But yeah, so there's a lot of characters that have retaliate now that is going to be a retaliate 2, and if you're running with the electrostatic armor, that's almost retaliate 3 as long as you're defending stuff. So man, retaliate 3, that's almost as good as like a basic attack. It's so good. All right, so Dauntless definitely going to be an auto include for most protection decks that are going to want to avoid damage or mitigate damage and defend a lot. So awesome card. Again, damage in protection is what we're looking for. Now, the other big weakness of protection is threat removal, and this card is amazing. It is called Hard to Ignore. 1 cost upgrade. It is a skill, and it says hero response. After your hero defends against an attack and takes no damage, exhaust Hard to Ignore, remove 1 threat from the main scheme. Now, the only way this card would have been better, I would have paid 3 if this would have done, it wouldn't have been a limit. If I didn't have to exhaust this, I would have paid 3 for this card and be like, I'm going to run 3 in my deck for shizzle. Because this is a way to defend and remove threat. So you are effectively thwarting every time you defend. So this is not a max once per player. So this is a card that most decks are going to, any protection deck is going to want to run at least 3 of. And again, after your defense against an attack, it doesn't say the villain. It could be a 1/1 minion. You defend against a 1/1 minion, remove 3 threat from the main scheme. This is so good. Such a good and needed card for protection. This opens up, again, a lot of good strategies. This is what I like to see, because we are finding, like, even aggression. We saw that with Groot, with Rocket. They have now ways to remove threat in aggression, specific to aggression. And this is specific ways to remove threat that are in the protection aspect. So this, again, opens up tons of new lines of play and deck building options. So really interesting card. It is a card that is going to see a lot of gameplay, I am sure. And definitely you should think about this for any character that has a defense of 3 or defense of 2, and you can upgrade their defense, especially if you're going to be playing it with the desperate defense cards and takedowns. There is amazing ways to countermand what the villain is doing by just defending. Now, love this card. And then we are allowed a new ally, and oh, this is so fun. Another 2-cost ally. I like this in these sets. 2-cost allies, cheapies. 1 thwart, 2 attack, 1 consequence damage for the thwart, 2 consequence damage for the attack. It is an aerial guardian. It says when Starhawk takes damage equal to his remaining hit points, return him to your hand. Now, which is really cool about this is you can actually thwart for 1, and then there's a minion with 2 attack. You can defend the attack for 2, and then you get him back to your hand. So you can prevent some attacks, or you can attack for 2, thwart for 1, or thwart for 1, attack for 2, depending on what you need, and keep bouncing Starhawk back to your hand. This is great because, again, he comes back to your hand, so he's effectively a +1 card hand size every second turn. So you play him so the first time you play him, it's just 1, but every other turn that you're playing, it's basically an extra card every turn because he's going to keep coming back to your hand. And if you're running those powers of protection, you can just keep playing him. But this is really, really good. It's technically card advantage as an ally. So very, very cool card. Love this tremendously. Very good ally. Definitely I'm going to be working around this and trying to figure out how to play with this guy a little bit more. But what I like about him too is he's an ally that has a replacement effect. So and especially against the collector, this guy is going to be awesome because you can use him, you can thwart, you can bring him back, and this guy never ends up in this collection. All right, so this is good. This is a good card against collector. All right, let's look at some of the basic cards. Again, one of the event cards that we're going to see is Flora and Fauna, which is great. So this is our eighth way to put growth counters. It's a team up, so obviously we need to find Rocket Raccoon. It doesn't matter if Rocket Raccoon again is in alter ego, as long as we are in hero form when we play Flora and Fauna, we are safe. And it says max once per deck. Obviously, place 2 growth counters on Groot to a maximum of 10 and ready him. So this is a ready effect for Groot. So awesome. And two growth counters on him. Or we can do the effect for Rocket, but again, we don't need to do the effect for Rocket. If we're playing solo, Rocket's going to be our ally, and he's not going to be in play. We don't have to worry about what he does. So that's really interesting. Now, this is one new card that I really enjoy, and I think it's going to have a lot of impact with a lot of characters because it's called Death Focus. And it's a 1-cost upgrade. Again, max once per player. So this is kind of interesting. It is kind of like the team building exercise, but for superpowers. And it says 1, hero action, exhaust Death Focus, and then reduce the resource cost of the next superpower card you play by 1. So again, all of our upgrades are 1. All of our superpowers, like all of our cards, in our event cards for Groot are superpowers. So that is going to it's going to reduce for almost everything in our deck by 1. Again, it's only max once per deck. So again, in the pre-con, you have 3 of those, but again, you always need cards as resources. So the fact that you can put it down and always keep that one out, it's great. All right, so Death Focus, very, very interesting. It's a basic card, so it goes in every deck that runs a lot of superpowers. Thor's Hammer, Hulk Smash, Spider-Woman has tons of superpowers as well. Every one of her basic, her aspect cards, I think, is a superpower. So very, very cool. And it's going to, again, go in a lot of decks, which I really like. All right. And then finally, our ally. Here we find Rocket Raccoon. And then he is a 3-cost ally. I love that he's basic too. So you'll be able to kind of assemble the team of the Guardians without having to play everyone. So if you're just playing, let's say, Star-Lord or Drax or Gamora when they come out, you can actually put Rocket Raccoon in your deck. You can put Groot in your deck. So, and hopefully we'll see like these versions for the other characters as well. So that should be pretty interesting to see. But ally, 3 cost, 2 thwart with 1 consequence, 1 attack with 1 consequence. Kind of seems kind of weird. 3 health, guardian, and you can only play him if you are a guardian. But he does have an interrupt. When the raccoon attacks a minion, he gets +3 attack, and it gains overkill. So this is a great minion killer for as an ally. Now, I kind of wish that we could keep him in play longer because there's no ways to heal our allies in the precons, which is kind of sad. But this is definitely an ally that you want to keep in play as much as possible. The overkill is going to get rid of guard minions and stuff like that. And that 4 attack, man. 4 attack for an ally is sick. So that is going to be really, really good. All right, so that is it for his hero kit. Again, there is no extra cards from the other aspects. So we're going to go straight into the bad cards. All right, now let's take a look at the obligation that he comes with. So obligation's called Wilt. It says, give to the group player, you may flip to alter ego form and choose, exhaust, and remove Wilt, which is fine. It's definitely not a painful one that you don't want to deal with. Going down to alter ego, actually, if you have the fertile ground and your growth spurt actually gives you 3 growth counters on it, so it's not that bad. But if you don't, you do have to remove 3 growth counters from Groot, and if no growth counters were removed this way, it's going to gain Surge. Obviously it works a lot with the with the growth counters, so it's not the worst to actually just flip down and exhaust, which I think is probably the best bet that you can do to get rid of this obligation. Now, if you are lucky like me and you see your Shadow of the Past every game, you will have to deal with Fernax, a 6 health minion with 2 scheme, 2 attack. And he is a Leviathan. He has a force response after Fernax activates. Deal 2 indirect damage to each player. So he is a painful buddy because, first of all, he schemes for 2 and then deals 2 indirect damage. Or he attacks for 2 and then deals 2 indirect damage to everyone. So definitely a minion that you need to destroy on sight. All right, so that is for Fernax. Obviously, he's pretty legit. He's a beast. All right. And then you are taking also a side scheme called Blazing Inferno. All right, so this is the force response after the villain phase begins. Deal 2 indirect damage to each player. So this is obviously something that you want to get rid of as soon as possible. I know it just seems like 2 indirect damage. You can just play it on the allies, but it's 2 and 2 and 2, and it's a constant. So try to get rid of that as soon as possible as well. All right. And then the other one, there's 3 copies of Treachery on his. It's called Fan the Flames. When revealed, take 2 indirect damage. If Blazing Inferno is in play, take 1 additional indirect damage. And if Fernax is in play, take an additional indirect damage. So that can be up to 4 indirect damage if you have not taken care of the side scheme or Fernax minion. So definitely get rid of that as soon as possible. Like, get rid of those 2 guys. They are bad news, and you want to get rid of those clowns as soon as possible. Now, let's take a look at some of the cards that might fit well within the different aspects. Just a quick look. Things that I think that would do well with these different types of with this character in the different aspects. But we're gonna do a full breakdown to see what best serves. But just as a quick glance, what I think works best him in. Let's start with aggression cards. All right, it's kind of sad to say, but I was looking through the aggression cards right now in the pool, and for Groot to play aggression, you're probably going to have to go for a permanent base solution because there is not a lot of stuff in aggression that kind of synergizes well with what he does. So it's going to be very generic stuff. Try to do maybe an Avengers build, like Groot joins the Avengers or something like that. A lot of permanent base stuff. Like you'll want to put the allies to kind of block for him. Like you could just go spin the wheel with the allies. There's no real events that you kind of want to run, but he does have a lot of attacks. So Martial Prowess is the only card I see that makes a lot of sense. Maybe the combat training, just because it's a permanent boot camp training, what's it called? The training Hall of Heroes. All the permanent cards. Anything that's a permanent you want to put in his deck in aggression to kind of whittle it down and to try to see most of his events come through. I was just looking at the cards and I'm like, yeah. There's not a lot of things that I see that can really synergize well with him. But again, aggression is there's a lot of options in aggression. You can use a lot of events if you just want to try to deal damage with your events and try to rush the villain. Which, again, the toe-to-toes. Oh, actually, toe-to-toe makes a lot of sense with him. So toe-to-toe, because he has all these growth counters and that really high defense, I think toe-to-toe would be one of the events that you would think about running on him, just so villain attacks you, deal 5 damage. Something attacks you, deal 5 damage. I think that's probably your best card. And then just, like he said, just a lot of permanents. Let's look at what he can excel with protection. Well, in protection, it makes a lot more sense that cards like Unflappable, Armored Vest, even Indomitable are pretty good. Dauntless, which is already a given, but Electrostatic Armor. Now, one thing that's weird. Obviously, I would definitely add a Nerves of Steel if you're going to be running a lot of the defense events. The thing is, you don't want to run cards like Sidestep, because Sidestep doesn't work with him. Same for Energy Barrier. Where's the Energy Barrier? So Energy Barrier, that's not actually a good fit for him. It's not a bad fit, because you can still... it only works if he's an alter ego and takes indirect damage. That's the only time you can actually activate these Energy Barriers. So, or if he has no growth counters on him. So again, it's not the best card in his deck because it's super counterintuitive because of his Floral Colossus. Because the game designers did think about this and be like, well, dude, if we have all these damage preventions, he's always going to be a 10 and he's just going to be doing his massive 10 things. You can still get around that, but cards like Energy Barrier and Sidestep won't help you get there. You're really going to have to focus on defending and taking no damage in other means. So, yeah, so Energy Barrier, not a good fit. Because of this, you see it's an interrupt, and this is a force interrupt. So that's why the timing is forced is quicker than interrupt. All right? But everything else here in these protection cards are going to be really, really good to add to the deck. Well, he already has a couple of Indomitables in his deck, but yeah, I think better than Indomitable is going to be the Desperate Defense. The +2 and ready is going to just be awesome, because as long as he has growth counters, he's never taking damage, which is amazing. So you're always going to trigger your Unflappable. You're going to be able to trigger Electrostatic Armor with Dauntless is going to give him a retaliate of 2, which is exactly what he attacks for. So, and then if you have the Hard to Keep Downs, or is it Hard to Keep Down? Is it called again? Hard to Ignore. Hard to Ignore is just going to make it so you're going to take no damage, you're going to retaliate, deal damage, and then with the Hard to Ignores is going to remove threat. So you're doing everything by defending. So this is amazing with this character. So that is the build you really want to do. Perfect defense, defend for everyone, or defend for in solo, just keep defending, and never back downs, and desperate defenses for the constant stun and everything. But I wouldn't go any more than those 3 events. Those 6 events, 3 never back downs, or even 2 never back downs. Yeah, 2 never back downs and 3 desperate defense, you're solid. You are going to be an invincible Groot in protection. All right, let's look at what Justice can bring to this deck. At first glance, the first card that comes to mind is Great Responsibility. I think that is a card that doesn't get a lot of play, but with a character like Groot who can just absorb a ton of damage, especially in solo and multiplay, I think this is going to be really, really cool. So you can kind of use those growth counters to mitigate threat, and then obviously everything else like beat cops and stuff like that to really keep threat under control with the permanents that you can play that can remove threat, rather than just using his basic thwart ability, which can still be okay once you find that entangling webs. So I think Great Responsibility is one of the cards that I would definitely try to find a way to play with in this kit, because again, being able to take 10 up to 10 threat all in one shot So it says, when any amount of threat would be placed on a scheme, you take it as damage instead. So obviously, like I'm thinking of the collector who has a scheme of 4 or a scheme of 5. He becomes like a 5/5 on the second stage. I mean, just insane amount of threat that can be canceled with a great responsibility. Schemes for 5? Yeah, no. We're gonna cancel that and just take it as damage instead. So I think Groot with the with those kinds of abilities is pretty awesome. That card. Now let's look at what leadership can do for him. Yeah, same for leadership. There's not really a strategy. You can just try to follow any leadership strategy. There's nothing really exciting that you can use for Groot if you're playing Groot in solo. There's nothing really that exciting that goes really well with his character in the in the leadership. Just play tons of allies. Keep your allies tough, so you can kind of use his abilities for something else, which is, and keep those growth counters on him as much as possible. Use your allies with cards like ready for action and stuff like that. So that's kind of ways to kind of play around it. Just put a whole bunch of allies and give them tough status cards, and then just defend with them. And then when you absolutely need to, defend with Groot, and then just keep his growth counters to 10, and then just go boom, 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 and kill. I think that's kind of the best thing that you could do here. And then in the basics cards, I'm like, again, the basic cards, just, you run if you're going to go just basics Groot, any permanent that you can put on the table is going to be just fantastic. And just deck thin. Like, put the endurance, downtime. You can't put honorary Avenger. Just remember, he is not an Avenger, so you cannot make him an Avenger if you're not an Avenger. So those are kind of sad, because those are like really cool cheap options that you could have played on him to give him plus health. But aside from that, no, there's lots of resourcefulness, a lot of cards that you can really deck thin with, and then you can also use as a resource later, and just use all these really cool allies. A couple of first aids to keep Rocket Raccoon, to keep minions at bay, and yeah, then Nick Fury, War Machine, Heimdall. Just run a whole bunch of allies. Again, same thing for as in leadership. Just basically deck thin and just use Groot stuff. Make him work. Make him awesome. So guys, that is the breakdown for Groot, understanding the mechanics. I hope you guys like this video, and I hope you guys will keep on playing Marvel Champions, and hope this video will help you beat the game. Ciao, ciao.